Right now, we're living through one of the biggest shifts in the history of medicine. We are moving away from those one-size-fits-all treatments to something way more precise, way more, well, personal. We're talking about medicine that's tailor-made not just for your illness, but for your very own biological code.
So just think about that for a second. What if treatments weren't based on what works for the average person, but on your unique genetic blueprint? What if the medicine you took was designed specifically for your body? I know, it sounds like science fiction, but this is the very real promise of personalized medicine.
For ever, medicine has worked in a pretty general way, right? You get sick, you go to the doctor, you get a standard treatment. But now we're seeing this massive transformation. We're shifting from that reactive, often trial and error approach to something that's proactive, incredibly precise, and deeply personal, all thanks to our individual genetic makeup.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll talk about this new era in healthcare. Then we'll get into the core science of genomics. After that, we'll see how it's actually being used to fight disease, how it's shaking up drug development, and finally, we'll look at the incredible promise and, of course, the challenges that lie ahead.
So let's dive right into that fundamental shift. We're finally moving towards an approach that's centered on the patient, where doctors are treating the individual, not just the disease.
And what's the engine driving this whole revolution? It really all comes down to one word: genomics. This incredibly powerful science is what's giving us the ability to personalize healthcare on a scale we've never seen before.
So if genomics is the engine, how exactly does it work? To really get a grip on its power, we first have to understand what this blueprint is and why it's changing, well, pretty much everything.
So what is genomics exactly? Well, simply put, it's the study of your entire set of DNA, your genome. But here's the key. It's not just about looking at the genes in isolation. It's about how they all talk to each other, how they work together, and how they react to your lifestyle and your environment. It is, quite literally, the complete instruction manual for you.
Now, you've probably heard the words genetics and genomics used kind of interchangeably, but there is a huge difference. Think of it like this. Genetics studies a single tree in a forest, while genomics studies the entire forest, all the trees, the soil, the ecosystem, how it all works together. And that bigger picture, that's what makes it so powerful for understanding really complex diseases. Okay, so this brings us to the most important question, right? How is this science actually being used to save lives today? Because the impact is already massive, in everything from how we treat cancer to how we manage chronic conditions. Let's start with cancer, because when you get right down to it, at its very core, cancer is a disease of the genome. It's caused by mutations, basically typos, in our DNA that tell our cells to grow out of control. And understanding that is the absolute key to fighting it better. So how does this actually play out for a patient? First, doctors will sequence the DNA from that person's tumor. Then they hunt for the specific mutations that are driving the cancer's growth. And finally, and this is the magic, they choose a drug that is specifically designed to attack only the cells with that mutation. It's the difference between using a sledgehammer and using a smart bomb. And listen, this isn't some far-off future stuff. This is happening today. We have specific drugs for things like HER2-positive breast cancer and lung cancers that have certain EGFR mutations. And get this, with tech like liquid biopsies, doctors can actually monitor a tumor's genetic changes in real time, just from a simple blood test. That means they can adapt the treatment as the cancer itself evolves. It's incredible. But it's not just about cancer, not by a long shot. Genomics is also a total game changer for managing chronic diseases. For diabetes, we can spot genetic variants that help guide diet choices. For heart disease, we can identify people who are at high risk decades before they have symptoms and start them on preventative therapy. This is that shift from reactive care to being truly proactive. And the impact just keeps going. The entire pharmaceutical industry is being rebuilt from the ground up because of this, leading to better drugs that are developed faster and much more efficiently. So how does it do that? Well, in a few huge ways. Genomics helps researchers find brand new genetic targets for drugs they never knew existed. It also lets them design way smarter clinical trials by picking patients who are genetically most likely to respond to a treatment. This means fewer costly failures and ultimately getting life-saving drugs to the people who need them faster. Okay, so this all sounds amazing, right? But with this kind of incredible power, comes some really big, complex questions. To move forward responsibly, we absolutely have to talk about the very real challenges that come with unlocking our genetic code. And these are not small issues. We're talking about fundamental things like privacy. How do we protect this incredibly personal data? And what about accessibility? How do we make sure these life-changing technologies are available to everyone, not just the wealthy? And maybe most importantly, we have to remember that our genes, they're only part of the story. Our lifestyle and our environment are just as critical. So as we look ahead, the real goal is to start combining genomics with other powerful fields. I'm talking about things like proteomics, which is the study of proteins, the little machines that do all the work in our cells, and metabolomics, which looks at our metabolism. Fusing all of this data together is what's going to give us a truly holistic, 360-degree view of our health. And really, it all leads to this vision, which I think just captures it perfectly. The future of medicine is going to be predictive, spotting risks before they become diseases. It's going to be preventative, acting on those risks early on. And maybe most important of all, it's going to be participatory, empowering each and every one of us to be an active partner in our own healthcare. And that leaves us with one final big question, a question for you, for me, for all of us. As this incredible technology gives us more information and more power over our health than ever before, what does that mean for our own responsibilities? What is our role in using this knowledge to shape our own health journeys? It's definitely something to think about.